Apologies for the late start. We were working through some technical problems, but we're here now. Better late than never. We wanted to make sure we got that sorted out before we went live on the air. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 263 of the Mike to New Haven podcast. 262 was interesting. That was Tuesday night. Pat Pogan and Rick Martinez, both returning guests for the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, and Mike Penna, retired lieutenant out of both FDNY Rescue 2 and FDNY Rescue 1, also returning guest, previously featured twice on the Best of the Bravest interviews with the FDNY's elite. All three gentlemen came back, I should say, to revisit the 1991 Union Square derailment. They were all there that night. They responded and they assisted in the rescue effort. So that incident turned 32 years old this past Monday. So we took a look back on it. It was a good show. I enjoyed it. And they seem to enjoy themselves too. So tonight's bound to be a very emotional show with my next guest, who I'll introduce shortly. But we got some business to take care of first. Of course, there is my consulting company, and Joe Murray, but we'll start off with my company.
Need advice on how to start your podcast? Frustrated with the editing process? Can't find a voiceover guy? Hi, I'm Mike Colón, and I'm here to help. I'm the owner and founder of MC Media Editing Services, your premier consulting company for all things media, where I can offer you consulting advice on how to get started, and once you get started, editing, as well as voiceover work, all for a very reasonable price. If you want to reach me, you can contact me at 917-781-6189 or the email that you see listed here. I'm always available, and I'm always willing to help. Again, 917-781-6189. Why go to some giant consulting firm that's going to charge you an arm and a leg when you can just come to me? If you want to be stress-free, the way to go is to call MC. MC Media Editing Services, your premier consulting company.
I'm always ready and eager to do business, so reach out to me if you ever want to. And of course, we have Joe Murray.
If you're ever caught on the wrong end of the law, call Joe Murray. Joe's a retired NYPD police officer turned criminal defense attorney. With 15 years of experience in the NYPD from 1987 until 2002, he parlayed a successful career in the NYPD into an equally successful career as a criminal defense attorney. His website is jmurray-law.com, where you can reach him at 646-838-1702, or just email him at joe@jmurray-law.com.
Okay, thanks to Joe Murray, as always, for his support. And before I introduce my guest, real quick shout out to people tuning in tonight. We got Rod Ventigan in the chat, who's a colleague of my dear producer. And of course, a special shout out to not just everybody else tuning in, but the Rogers de la Cruz family down in Pennsylvania, nice enough to tune in tonight. Some of my extended family among them, and my producers down in PA enjoying a nice weekend. And he wanted me to give a shout out to them before we get into things tonight. So shout out to them, and thank you very much for tuning in. Now to my next guest. It was an adventurous 20-year career for him, as he experienced the full cycle of emotions that police work can provide, and it can provide a lot, as he'll tell me about tonight. He was a longtime member across two different stints of Manhattan's 13th Precinct, where he worked as both an officer from 1987 until 1997, and again as a detective from 2000 until 2005. He's also an alumni of Auto Crime, where he was from 1997 until 2000, and lastly, the Major Case Squad, where he was from 2005 until his retirement in 2007. And that, for this episode 263 of the Mike to New Haven podcast, is retired NYPD Detective Roy Ruland. Roy, welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
No, thank you very much for being here. Long time coming to get you on. And like I said, in the promo for the show, I'm glad I reached out. So before we get into you getting on the job, same question I ask every guest. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Rosedale, Queens, New York. I was a blue-collar family. My father, who was a World War II veteran, was a New York City police officer. He joined in 1955, and he retired in 1977, the night of the big blackout, was his first day of retirement. Wow. My mother was a nurse, and I was a middle child. My brother Steve was a sergeant. He went on the police department first, I followed right behind him. And my sister was a dental assistant. And, I went on the job quite young. I went on when I was just hit 20. I was 22 years old when I entered the police academy in January 20th, 1987.
So seeing your dad at work, I imagine that did it for you. You wanted to be a cop after seeing him.
Yes, I did. I really didn't. Looking back, like people ask me, it's like anything else in life. You're out and about in your neighborhood and you run into people and you find out, like, he or she is a cop, and you're like, or a fireman or anything else. And you go, hey, if they could do it, I could do it too.
Right.
I don't know how it is today, but that was the thing back then. But I did. I wanted to do it. And my older brother, Steve, he's 2 years older than me. He would come home as a rookie cop and I'd be asking him all these questions. So my brother, Steve, was a big influence also in helping me, choose my path.
As I've covered many a time with cops that came on before the merger of 1995, you get on during a time when you don't know exactly where you're going to go until the end, because they would do 5, 5, and 5. These 5 would go to the NYPD. These 5 would go to housing. These 5 would go to transit. Did you specifically, given your family history, want the NYPD, or did you not care just as long as you got to be a cop in New York City?
Well, like everybody else, I'm sorry, Mike, that's why you brought that up. Thank you so much. Everybody says that, like, I just wanted to get on, but of course, transit was transit, and I work with transit cops and housing cops. And when you really get on the job and you see how they work, when you don't know, you're like, I don't want to be transit, I don't want to be housing, I don't want to be NYPD. They all had just as difficult jobs out there, of course, I wanted to be NYPD, but if I would have got transit or housing, of course, I would have taken it. And I'll tell you in a short story what had happened when, I got out of the academy and I met a rollover from transit that I worked with in NSU, after I got out. But, like I said, entering the academy, I found out that I was NYPD, and, that's the way I went. Don't ever discourage it. Go on.
No, of course. Of course. In 1987, did they still have NSUs, or were they starting to do away with that? I know by the beginning of the 90s, they had done away with it.
Like everything else with the police department, they always change. At the time, it was FTOs, and then it turned, when I got there, it was NSU. So I was assigned to NSU 3, which was Midtown Manhattan, Times Square, and it covered Midtown South, Midtown North, and the 17th precinct. And we were assigned there for 6 months.
So I imagine, listen, you're 22 years old. You've grown up in New York City, but you were a Queens kid. So this is Midtown Manhattan during the 80s. It's a wild time. Cracks just starting to come out on top of that. This was before Giuliani distified it in the mid-90s. Yeah. So being a 22-year-old kid on the streets of Midtown as a rookie cop, that had to have been quite the eye-opener for you early on.
Oh, without a doubt. The first thing was, like, people laugh when I always say, thinking of the movie, what was that, Taxi Driver.
Yep.
When you're out there on 42nd Street, it was unbelievable. And when the tourists all went home, you were out there with the undesirables, the scammers, and you learned real fast. And unlike today, a lot of times you were by yourself. You just had your radio. There was another police officer that would be a block away. And back in those days, if you teamed up together, you would get in trouble. You go down, you're supposed to be on 8th Avenue, you're supposed to be on the other side. And, it felt like you were kind of back in high school. But when you were out there by yourself, it was an eye-opener. I saw a lot of things that, really just victims and, ODs on the street, press. It's just horrible, it was. But, you felt like you were doing something. You were out there and you were doing something. You were helping, no matter who it was, you were out there helping. And as a young 22-year-old, that's, the way I felt, and that's when I started getting active, making arrests, because I said to myself, this is what I'm here to do. And, I went out and I was active, and, I did what I had to do. And, I think I was told one time, I got yelled at by the desk sergeant. He said to me, "You're not going to get any OT out of this, kid."
Not in those days. I don't know how it is now, but yeah, that was the thing back then.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm in the middle of reading Bill Bratton's newest book, The Profession, and he talks about that. And it was not just in New York City; it's nationwide at this time in the 70s and 80s,
Correct. Yeah.
where they were measuring policing not by crime prevention, but how fast you could clear a call. You get a call, you maybe get a collar
Correct.
out of it,
Yeah.
maybe two.
Right.
You bring them back, and how fast can you clear that call to get to the next one? And that was something that he was really discouraged by, because exactly your attitude. I want to be active. I want to make collars. I want to be a cop. I'm not worried about how long it's going to take me, just as long as I help somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. It was true. And, it was, there was a lot of stress too, because you're young,
right?
You're seeing people shot,
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing people, just name it, jump is that word, but somebody commits suicide when they jump off a building.
Yep.
Accidents, stabbings, slashings, just, everything, and you kind of cope pretty quick with it. You kind of say, all right, you're here to do it. And then like the other rookie officers that you worked with in NSU were all rookies. You kind of got tighter together. You kind of like, you bonded, because you were out there and you were working together. But, that's what I always appreciated. And you always had senior officers. I was lucky because my brother Steve was, he had, I think I had 4 years in Midtown South. So I was only there for my NSU. My nickname was the Little Ruland. Because back then the cops didn't talk to us unless we needed help. It was just the way it was.
Well, you had to earn your keep, right?
Yeah, don't get offended. It's just the way it was. And
of course,
and I can remember standing on I think it was on 42nd and 8th, and old timer, we consider an old timer. He was walking up and he looked at me and he says, "You're Little Ruland." I said, "Yeah, my brother Steve," and he goes, "Steve's a good man," and he walked away. So I kind of had that little, I always count my blessings that my brother was there while I did my 6 months, because, you're working with those police officers that were assigned to that precinct,
Right.
And, I had a great group of guys. And you mentioned earlier about transit. We had a transit rollover that was, he was in transit, and then he went on, I think, he went on 6 months before I did. And he rolled over from transit. So you had to repeat your NSU.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you're NYPD. So, and he lived in Long Island, and it was police officer Eddie Byrne. And, it was kind of funny about it was, he lived in Massapequa, and I lived in Rosedale, and we would take the same train, the Long Island Railroad, because it was right there. And, he was just, as a person, he was always that kind of guy. You come over to you like, when, "Hey, what's up? How's it going?"
Yeah.
Like I knew him that way. Like, when you see pictures and stuff about, police, and when he was tragically murdered, I always thought of him in a different light. We worked together, and, he had the 6 months. I used to call him the 6 month hair bag.
Remember you telling me that? Yep.
Yeah, because he had, he did the transit time, but he was knowledgeable, and, you would want somebody like that, with you, when you were out there. And, like I said, with everybody else in NSU, not taken away from anybody else, we had a good group of people. And I remember that 6 months was from July until December of 1987. And me and him were standing in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral because they had a fixer there, because I don't remember exactly, but some emotionally disturbed person went in and attacked parishioners in St. Patrick's Cathedral. So they had kind of like a fixer post there or whatever. And I remember him telling me he was going to the 103. And I said, "You're going to the 103? And he says, "Yeah." He goes, I want to go to Queens. I want to work there. And I think he had a friend that he wanted to partner up with. And, I was like, I found out I was going to the 13th. So I was like, all right, I'm staying in Manhattan. And that was the last time I saw him and talked to him.
Yeah. For those that don't know the story, I'll tell it briefly. Eddie Byrne came from a family of cops. And he, as you said, got out originally to New York City Transit Police. He rolled over into the NYPD. And on the night of February 26, 1988, he was guarding the home of a witness who was going to testify against a drug dealer. and these two animals rolled up, and one guy pretended to knock on the window of Eddie's cruiser, pretending to ask him for some directions or help or whatever it was. And while he did that, the other animal rolled up with the gun and, like the coward he was, shot Eddie 5 times in the back of the head and murdered him. And that murder sparked not just outrage across the 5 boroughs, it sparked outrage nationwide. President Reagan, who was still the president at the time, called Eddie Byrne's family to offer his personal condolences. And when he was campaigning for president, George H.W. Bush, or as some of you better know him, Bush 41, not to confuse him with his son, carried around Eddie Byrne's badge on his campaign trail. So Eddie's murder, which turned 35 years old this later, is one that really changed things in New York City. And he's remembered. His brother went on to become a deputy commissioner with the NYPD, Larry Burns. He passed away a few years ago of a heart attack. But the Byrne family has given a lot to New York City policing. And Eddie was no exception. He's one of those guys, and it's a shame. He only had 2 years with the NYPD. You know, as you talked about, and as many people who knew him talk about him, at 22 years old, he was a rising star. There's no doubt he would have been a detective someday, sergeant. He had a great career ahead of him.
Yeah, like I said, I knew him, as a friend, you look back on your career and, everything you just said is true, but you look back, you only visualize us being 2 rookie cops, having the transit time. And, he knew I was active and, he was active and, it really hurt, right after I got to my permanent command. He passed away shortly after that, and that was the start of a lot of things for me.
Yeah. We're talking with Roy Ruland, retired NYPD detective. Let me ask you, not that it wasn't real for you before. I'm sure your father had told you stories. I'm sure when you were in the academy, your instructors told you stories. But it's different when it's someone you know. Even if you're not airtight with them, if you know them in any way, it hits very close to home. Or change that, it hits you directly at home, directly in the heart. So when he was murdered in the line of duty in '88, tell me about how that shifted your perspective, if at all, as a very young cop who, like you said, just got to your first permanent command.
Yes. Well, it was funny because, when I got to my command, not to get off the subject about Eddie, because Anthony and me had just, met.
Right. Anthony Sanchez.
Yeah, it was January 13th, 1988. I remember I was assigned. I got to the 13th precinct. I sat down. I didn't know anybody. Remember, we were all in various set of shoes, and now we're all going to our permanent command. So I had gotten there, and I was sitting there, and I'm looking around, and everybody's looking around, and there was this gentleman sitting to the right of me. And he looked at me, had a big smile on his face, and he says, he goes, "Hi, my name's Anthony." And I said, "Hi, I'm Roy." And he goes, I said to him, I says, "Yeah," I says, "Great, January 13th, we're assigned to the 13th." And he said, "Yeah." And he was just, nobody was talking. We were just all like, we would all become best of friends, but
right.
It was just, it always amazed me how he just, for some reason, sitting next to me, just turned and introduced himself to me and said to me, I'm Anthony, Anthony Sanchez." And I said, "Hi, I'm Roy Ruland." And he's like, "Yeah." And it just, that started it, right there. And, we found out later on that we would be assigned to the same squad of police officers where, back then we weren't steady tours. So we were assigned together, and another good friend of mine who was a rookie with us, police officer Joe Abruzzi, he was with us. And you got to remember, too, was, in our group, there were so many of us, and, they were hiring at that time. They were hiring a lot of cops from 85 to 86 to 87. So we were all like kind of in that same age group. And that kind of, took a little of the rookie stress jitters away, when you first got there. But that's how I started. The first time I met my partner was that first day. And
sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that was like I said, the first day I met him. And then just to finish was I was driving a sergeant, and Very nice man. I'm still friends with him today. And he was reading the paper, and they said about a police officer being shot in Queens. And he showed me the paper. He held it up and he showed it to me. And I was driving. We were having coffee, and it was Eddie Byrne. And I think the sergeant was more shocked. Like what would be, me being sitting next to him saying, I worked with him. I was in his shoe. I just spoke to him, a month ago, and it was horrible. It was horrible. I just remember I was new, and I remember he just said to me, do you want to take lost time and go home? And I'm like, I'm brand new in the 13th. I'm like, no. I want to.
Right.
But and then Anthony, who our lockers were next to one another, and over the years they changed the locker rooms, but we were next to one another, and he was in my NSU, but I didn't know Anthony. He was in another squad, and he said he thinks, I think, you say, I think I remembered, Eddie Byrne, and I'm like, you probably seen him, and it was like Anthony was very, very compassionate, towards me. He was like, because we were in the same NSU, he didn't know Eddie, but he knew that, we were all in the same there together. And I always remember that with Anthony. It was like the first time that early on that, here I am with my partner discussing about a cop, that I knew. And he, I think, met because we're all went to details and stuff as, and, that was really, kind of hard starting off in the 13th. I'll tell you that.
Oh, of course. And that was a very dangerous, as I've covered before on the program, a very dangerous time for police officers across all three departments. Because while you were in the academy, Bobby Venable in transit gets shot and killed on the man with the gun called Two Heavily Armed Guys. That was while you were still in the NSU, I should say.
Yeah.
And then Eddie Byrne happens. 2 months later, Tony McLean in housing gets shot and killed looking for a missing girl. He stumbles upon a drug deal. So this was during a time when, for those of you that I would say, if you really want to understand the scope of this for the audience, go on the Officer Down Memorial page, type in NYPD, and just look through the 80s. So many cops not only getting killed, the common theme of them getting killed in the line of duty was gunfire. A lot of guns on the street, and unfortunately, a lot of felons who weren't afraid to use them. And, listen, that's daunting for a rookie, like we were talking about earlier. But the 13th, for those of you that don't know where that is, Midtown Manhattan, and I know it because being a huge ESU buff, Truck One's there. It's right next door. And I've been down there, and I don't know how they park there because that street is so freaking narrow. I don't know how you guys did it, but it's an expansive area, an interesting area. You got a lot of shady characters and funny characters alike there in that area. And you were working the midnights, during that particular time frame in New York City's history in Midtown Manhattan. So tell me about the interesting stories of the midnight tour specifically during the late 80s, early 90s there.
Well, just before that, we went to, I think it was 1990 when we had gone to Midnights. And I just got to say, Lord rest him, Chief George Brown, who was Chief of Detectives, Lord rest him. He was our commanding officer at the time. And I remember my sergeant coming up to me and Anthony and saying, congratulations, the commanding officer is reviewing everybody's activity, and you and Anthony have the activities, so you got a seat. So, we were, like, oh, I says, okay, that's, we were still like two little kids, like we were all excited. And then, we decided, Anthony said, that we're going to go to study tours. And of course, we were on foot posts together and we responded to a lot of stuff together, and now we're going to be a steady, sector car or, police car, as people that don't know what that is. And we were going to Midnights. So, yeah, we went right into Midnights. And, wow, it was unbelievable back in the day. Our sector was the West Side. We had the Limelight. I'll try to name them all. I mean, the Limelight was ours. We had the Building. We had, what was the other one? Club Vertigo. And there was one up on 26th Street. And at that time on midnights, it was there was a lot going on, and we had a lot of the Palladium on Irving Place.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I heard of that one.
Yeah, great story. Myself and Anthony was sitting one night, and there was always mayhem going on at the Palladium when all the West Coast, East Coast rap stuff started. It wasn't like now today, but back then it was just a term. And we're sitting there on Irving Place facing 14th Street, and we're watching this. I'll never forget. It was a Pathfinder. I think it was a white Pathfinder, and it just went through every light, right past us, right down towards was that 2nd or 3rd Avenue. So Anthony, hits the lights, and we pull them over, and we get out, and his car's crammed with all these gentlemen, and they're all yelling and stuff. And I said, "Oh, who owns the car?" So the passengers go yelling at the driver. He goes, "I do." And I get out and I walk him because I could smell some, I could smell something coming from the car.
Yeah.
But we were busy in those days. So, I got him out of the car and I walked him over and I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm an actor." And I said, "Oh, you're an actor?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." He goes, he had a good story. Some crazy fan was coming after us. So we were trying to get away from him. So we went through every red light down 14th Street. So I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "So did you notice that the police were there? Maybe you could have pulled over and said, 'Hey, we need help.'" So he laughed, and it was Tupac Shakur. And I remember his name because I really couldn't, I said, "The actor." And so I said, "All right, listen, get in the car, get going, whatever." And, that's what you did.
Right.
The movies are it's all BS. I'm sorry.
No, you didn't say that. You didn't say the word. You're good.
I didn't say the word. But, in those days, so I met, like so many, you worked midnights and all the clubs were going. And when stuff kicked off, you were there. And I think it was a short time later on, Tupac got shot.
Yeah, the first shooting in 94, I think.
Yeah, he was leaving somewhere in Midtown South.
Yep.
And he got robbed.
Mm-hmm.
And we were coming down, and they called over the radio. And when we got to Bellevue Hospital, they were saying, Anthony said to me, "That was the actor." No, he kept saying rapper. "That was the rapper we pulled over about a month ago." And I was like, "No, the actor." And it was always funny because they tell my kids the story and they laugh. And I got to say, seeing Biggie Smalls, though, I got in front of the Palladium one night. I got to tell you, he dressed like the nines. He had this.
He did.
He came out. He looked at me, had a cane, and I remember looking at him, and I said to him, "You look good." I learned to lean on. It was him.
Yeah.
And he gave me the head nod, and he had the old hat on.
Yep.
I'll tell you, he dressed nice. That guy, nice shoes too.
Yeah, he was a big dresser.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff. There was a lot of crazy stuff on the midnights, and a lot of people, couldn't handle it. They were like, there was a lot of, the limelight. We had to come back on your podcast and talk about the limelight, and Peter Gation with the patch and everybody in front, and it was just, it was just a time that was really good, and we worked hard. And, as time went on, we gained a reputation. We became the steady sector in our seat. And we vacation pics, and we were coming up 10 years. And May 19th, 1997, it all changed. Changed.
Yeah.
Top of the world. We were loving life. Everything was great. His son was born July 31st, 1990. He adored his son. Anthony was the type of person, when I met him, he was married. He got married young. I was a 22-year-old and thought I was a little wild and crazy and whatever. Not saying anything bad, but I envied Anthony. I envied him. And I think, working with him, that's how tight I became with him. And my wife, she immigrated from Northern Ireland in 1986, and I met her, and we dated and eventually got married. Anthony was in my wedding party. She came from a troubled area, which was Northern Ireland, and she was not used to, freedom here. And she'll still say it to this day. And, Liz and Anthony were, married, and we all went out together. We went away together. They went to Washington, D.C. together. My wife always wanted to see the Capitol and then
Right. Disney
World. So you're working together, and, you're just friends. And then my son, Patrick, was born in 1995. He said to me, you got a son now, and I have John. This is going to be really good. Even though it's a couple of years ahead of him. He said, well, don't worry, John will teach Patrick how to play football. And it was all going great. And then that was it. 10 years together, tenure. We were active. We were respected. We loved what we were doing. And then, like I tell people today, it just can change.
On a dime.
And I go like this, snap of a finger. And that's what happened. That's what happened.
I'll get to that night a little bit later. I do want to draw it back a little. By the way, Mark Mueller, who worked in the 13th for a while, he says to say hello to you. I don't know if you remember. Yeah,
yes, I do.
He's listening. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He's been on the show. Hey, Scotty, I just saw Scotty Wagner pop into the chat, former hostage negotiator in the NYPD and homicide detective. Just to last note on Tupac Shakur, he actually, people focus on his rap career. I love his music as a 90s hip hop fan, but he's actually a pretty good actor too. For those of you that may not be familiar with his movies, I highly suggest Juice, but Poetic Justice is a favorite of mine that he was in with Janet Jackson. So very good movie. He was actually a really good actor who got cut short too soon, unfortunately, thanks to senseless violence. One thing I did want to touch on before we get to that night later on in the spring of 97 is you and Anthony were really good at getting stolen cars off the street. And there was a lot of them during this time. So, listen, it takes a really special cop to have an intuition for that. And especially in a place like Manhattan where it's so compact and you have so many cars all over the place and it's not uncommon to see ritzy ditzy cars, if you will. Tell me about how, well, basically, for lack of a better way to word the question, how good you and Anthony got at spotting them and getting them off the street with the perps with them.
So the problem was where Zeckendorf Towers was, especially in that area, where Irving Place was in Gramercy Park. People that would come in from all over the world,
yes.
to come into the city to party and visit and go out to eat or whatever, they always thought, well, I saw that, 16th Street in Irving Place or, Union Square and this was safe. No, nowhere's safe. And the perpetrators knew where to go. So we were in uniform and we were in a marked police car and it got tough. So we developed skills. I'm thinking, my mind's going back to the day with Anthony.
Yep.
He would get out of the car and he would go in the door, like he's going to speak to a doorman, and we would watch a certain car. And what they would do is a lot of the perpetrators, they would pop the lock out of a car and then go, and they had a machine to make a key and then go back to, that was a favorite. So if we saw a lock popped on a car, we would drive down, or we would see, a car, same car going down the block, like they were looking for a parking spot. And there was no, you could only go around like 3 or 4 times and no cars are moving. And then you notice, like, no, they're not looking for a parking spot. But Anthony was very good at it. He was into it. And he always said, Roy, when we make that big arrest, I go, yeah. He goes, going to auto crime. And I go, what? Auto crime? No, I want to go to homicide. I want to go there. He's like, and he used to always, that was Anthony's specialty. He was into the cars. And yeah, we, they would, pursuits weren't allowed. I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah, but I can see why. It's too crowded of an area. Yeah, this ain't Los Angeles.
Right. But you would notice how many cops from the 6th precinct, the 9th, the 10th, the South, the 17th would always be there to assist you.
Yeah. Not only that, you got truck 1 next door. If it really hits the fan, hey, like I said, 13th is right next to truck 1. Hey, emergency, and they come right up. It's not a bad assistance to have.
They were always the best. They were always good. I remember they were filming that movie It was a short-lived thing called
True Blue.
True Blue. So
yeah.
so as a rookie cop, I was assigned to Bellevue Men's Shelter, which you were just there by yourself, and it was, all mayhem with all the, the homeless and everybody fighting and drinking and
testosterone,
doing their drugs. And one day there was a gentleman, he started a fight in the middle of the street, and they were used to me, and the thing was, it was good about it in those days was, if you messed with the cop that was outside of the men's shelter, you weren't getting a bet. That's what the director, he was such a nice man. I can't remember his name. He was the director there, and he was such a nice man, and he would tell them. And so I grabbed this guy, and I'm just like walking him across the street, holding him, and the truck pulls up, and I'm thinking it's CSU, and they're all looking out like, they're in shock, and I'm like, no, everything's good. I go, oh no, that's the movie truck. Well, the guy I'm walking across the street starts yelling at him, thinking it's like he was like profanity and everything else. Yes. And they were all the actors. It was right on First Avenue and 30th Street. It was hysterical, but yeah, True Blue. But yeah, they were always there for us. God bless all the men and women that worked there. They were fantastic.
Oh, they were great. And quite a few of those guys that worked in the 13th ended up in ESU, if not Truck One. Pete Conlon worked in the 13th. Yeah, I would say you remember Pete. He had a shooting, actually. He was telling me about it.
Pete Conlon. I know Pete. Patrick O'Connor.
Yep.
I know. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry, but there was so
Barry
many.
Nagelberg.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ray Buckowitz. Yeah.
Oh, Ray. See, I worked when myself and Anthony became on Midnights. Ray and his partner Mike worked with us long before, so we worked with Ray and Mike when we first got to Midnights, and knew Ray very well.
Did you work with Paul Rogers? He went on to the FDNY later on. You remember Paul Rogers from that time?
Yes, I do.
I know he's watching tonight. Paul did it the first 8 years of his career with the PD in the 13th before he went to the fire department. Became a lieutenant there. Did some great stuff.
Paul Rogers and his good friend Robert Fazio.
Yep. Another gem. And during this time, you get some big jobs going on all over the city, and it must have, because you went from the street crime of the 80s. It reached a fever pitch in 1990 because you had almost close to 3,000 homicides, 2,600 plus homicides in 90. Right. 91, you have two riots, 91, 92, Crown Heights in 91, Washington Heights in 92. And then comes, the bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993. So it's a lot happening in a short period of time. And I think you were telling me off the air, did you go to the bombing in 93?
Yes, I did. I always laugh about that because I was down in, I believe it was grand jury or a hearing. And I was there by myself, and I was in uniform, and somebody came in and said there was a bomb went off at the World Trade Center, and you could hear out of 100 Center Street where I was, in the building, all the sirens. So I had gotten up, and the ADA says, "You're not leaving." I said, "No, I'm leaving." He goes, "No, you're not leaving." I said, "Goodbye." And I got there, and I saw it. And, everybody was running around, and they took I was put on a roster. And then after a while, you kind of think like, all right, I'm on a roster, I'll be okay. So I think a lieutenant came up to me and says, 13 precinct. I said, yeah, I was down in court. He goes, go back to court.
Dang it.
Court was long closed by that point anyway. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. That was a good memory.
Of course. And some people tell me, of course, the Bomb Squad, I've covered that for my Bomb Squad miniseries, Tales from the Boom Room. They had the role in it, as did ESU, FDNY, whatnot.
Yeah.
But some people tell me that, they just went down there to maintain a presence and babysit it. And they always talk about the crater, how large that crater was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was
unbelievable.
A sight to see. Yeah, unbelievable. That was a sight to see back then, and a warning shot, if you will. So from that period, go ahead. My apologies.
No, I was saying the different smells. I remember there was I don't know, fuel smell, or I remember all the smells coming from that crater. I guess I just remember that was everything everybody was always worried about, something collapsing or something exploding.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a sight to see. It really was. It's something I'll never forget. the first one. It's like you said, that I don't know how that tower didn't come down, because that crater was pretty deep.
They missed it by a few feet. Somebody said, I think it was one of the bomb squad guys said that they would have parked it a little bit closer to one of the beams, they would have knocked it down. They just missed it by a few feet, which is scary to think. A few notes in the live chat. Rod Bennigan, appreciate you tuning in. He says he had a buddy that worked in the Tomb of Gloom, the 3-2. I know a few people from the 3-2. And my boy Kev tuning in tonight. Good to see you, brother. Hope you're enjoying your Friday night. Now, at this time is interesting in New York City because Dinkins rolls out Safe Street, Safer City. So you got a lot more cops getting hired across the 3 departments. And then Ray Kelly came in for his first go around as commissioner from 92 to 94. Crime's starting to go down. And cops are being incentivized to go out there and do the work. Because when Brian Watkins got killed in 90, that's when the city said, enough already. Like, when is this going to stop? You know, it had gotten to a breaking point, as we discussed earlier. Then Bratton comes in. I just had Bratton on the show. We talked about this. You heard of him during his time running transit. Now he's the NYPD commissioner. And there's some really cool, radical stuff going on that's specifically tailor-made to cops like you and Anthony. So I imagine 94, 95, 96, when he was commissioner, it must have been a breath of fresh air. Like, wow, like we can really be cops again.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, what it was there was a lot of things, going on. And the one thing that always really bothered me and my partner Anthony was when the whole nonsense with the Dowd case came out. Because, everybody labeled us. And I mean, looking today, and it was tough because, anywhere you went or anywhere you did, it was always thrown in your face.
Yeah.
And, you would say, look, we're not all like that.
Exactly.
It was just, I remember that bothered the hell out of me and Anthony because, we were out there working, we were doing, God's work. We didn't mess around. We knew what we were out there to do. And, for people to read stories in newspapers and then turn around and say, oh, dirty 30, you're all crooked. Hey, if there was a bag of drugs laying there, you'd be like, hey, go away, go bother somebody else, just stupid stuff. It was like a headache you didn't need at that time.
Right.
And, because a lot of us at that time, there was cops that were getting shot and cops were getting hurt, doing their job and not being corrupt and not, and it just, that kind of was like the first blow that we got, besides some others,
Yeah.
I think the other thing too was, like you said, going into the 80s, into the 90s, I think the biggest thing for myself, and I, speak for Anthony too, and a lot of other police officers, was with the AIDS epidemic that came out. And, you went to a lot of these gay men that had nobody, and nobody wanted to go near them because they were afraid and they were dying. And to really see somebody suffering, I remember it's like as a young cop, it really, it was horrible, just, it wasn't like, it was like they suffered, from that horrible disease. And, everybody was afraid. Remember, everybody was like, if you, if they touched you, you were going to get it.
You were going to get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it used to frustrate the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Because, you would go in and you would see a poor young man and, he's in pain and he's dying and, or he passed and there's, abandoned, because everybody was like, you have AIDS, you're from another planet at that time. So that was kind of tough dealing with too. But in the positive sense, you got an education, you did. Where other people would say, oh, I didn't know that, about many things. And that was one thing, like, you're not going to get AIDS from, using somebody's pen, like crazy crap.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds crazy now, but at the time people didn't know. And like you said, it wasn't until, it wasn't until Magic Johnson came out and talked about him having HIV that people finally started to understand it better. Because he played on the Dream Team in 92 and people were like, oh, what about his sweat? Like, it sounds, in hindsight, it sounds ridiculous. But back then, people really didn't know.
No, they didn't. And that's what I think was bad, because like when you responded as a police officer, you know, a lot of them, you know, they would pass away at home, or they were, you know, calling an ambulance, and they, you know, because, you know, and you went there, and, you know, you're just like, this is wrong. You know, it's wrong. You know, it's like, you know, people should understand. And here I am, you know, 23, 24 years old. And I'm like, no, it's, you know, it's not what people think, you know, it's not, you know, and just the fact that, you know, they were by themselves, you know.
Well, you were compassionate.
Yeah. You couldn't help it. You couldn't help it, you know. So, yeah, you know, it was just, that was another, again, welcome to the real world, Roy. You know, it's just, and, you know, positively, I learned a lot, and I'm proud of it.
Oh, of course. I can see that shining through in your remarks tonight.
Yeah.
It's Roy Ruland, Detective Roy Ruland, retired NYPD detective. I'm the Major Case Squad Auto Crime in the 13th Precinct tonight on Mike the New Wave podcast, episode 263. Scotty Wagner, who, like I said, retired as a detective back in 2001, originally a housing cop. He came over with the merge in 95. Not to mention the Volpe and the Luima case hurt the morale of us all. It was like taking 3 steps back, he says. It took a lot to regain the public trust. And before you chime in with that, Roy, let me just say that, and not that you guys in the chat would, but to anybody watching this show, and I'm not kidding when I say this, if you ever ask me to have Michael Dowd on the show, I will punch you in the face. And on that note, go ahead. Your thoughts on that, Roy?
Yeah, like I said, it was a bad time for us, for us honest, active guys that were out there busting our humps, you know, and enjoying what we were doing, you know, and it's just, there was so much, like, you know, it just, for some reason, that was just like, you know, it was like something to be like, to make fun of you, you know, or you would go out and someone say, oh, I remember, what was that stupid, the house that Coke built, or crack built, or whatever it was. And, you know, and people would make stupid jokes, and you know, you'd be like, what? Oh, I'm only kidding. You know?
No, you're not.
You know, and then, you know, I think there was a way, I think cops only know it. I know firemen know it too. And there's a kind of look you give a person, and they know, all right, I won't joke with him no more. I won't bust his chops.
Yeah,
maybe that look like, I'm not taking this.
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why it was good when Bratton came in, because it was him, not just him, Timony, Miller, Maple, Anamone, you know, and collectively they kind of restored the trust that the people hadn't had in the NYPD in a long time. And like I said, it was tailor-made towards the active cops that were going out there and making it happen. And like I said, we'll get to that tragic night in a little bit. But before any of that, is there a collar from that time frame that you and Anthony had, or maybe you and another officer had, where afterwards you said, dang, that was really good police work?
Yeah, there was one particular one. There was a gang of individuals. I believe they were armed with a Tech 9, and they just went on. Yeah, they went on like a robbery spree. They hit a couple of the coffee vendors that would, you know, set up for the morning, because it was midnights, and they put me and Anthony in a cab, a yellow taxi cab, but we were in uniform. So when the job came over, you know, they came up to like hail our cab, and
can't make it up.
Yeah, can't make it up. And we jumped out, and all I remember was they all split up, and you know, Anthony went one way, I went the other, and I remember being on the radio and your heart's going. I remember reading the radio transmission. Anthony was like, mid block, and you know, when they recovered the gun, I remember me and Anthony said afterwards, wow, that was kind of scary. And I said, yeah, but everything went well. We made the arrest. And then another time there was a robbery, and it was up there, Broadway, like 24th Street. And one perpetrator was running right past me. I opened up the car door. I was on the passenger side to jump out. Anthony threw it in reverse and hit me in the back with the car door. And it went flying. And, you know, I told them to keep going. And, you know, we ended up there. You know, there was a lot, collars that we had, but, you know, always was a good one, but, you know, always looking for the better one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
saying? Listen, nothing wrong with that. If it's good intentions, which it was, then hey, have at it. And you guys were certainly having at it. That's why crime was going down in the 90s. The city, like I said before, the city of 1990 compared to the city of 1999, night and day. Night and day.
Yes, correct. Yeah,
that's
absolutely right.
Yep. And a big part of the reason is the work that you guys were doing back then to clean it up. So, I know you wanted to talk about this, and it's something that I asked you if you did, and you do, and I'll set the stage for you, and you'll take it from there. Monday, May 19th, 1997. You and Anthony are working in a sector car along with a few other officers, and a call for a robbery in an apartment comes over the air, and you and Anthony and a few other officers take it, and I'll let you pick it up from there.
Yeah, just that night was just to go right before, because I think it's always important I tell, because people afterwards about tragedy and PTSD and trauma. Went in that night, and Anthony would come in for Babylon on the Long Island Railroad, and I would switch. I still do live in Oceanside. And I remember I walked up to see which car he was in, and he was sleeping. So I banged on the window to wake him up. And we got in, and we were talking, and we went into work. We did our usual thing, and got out. We were parked on 26th Street and 7th, and we're filling out our memo books and stuff and talking. And Anthony was excited because his son John was turning 7 in July. He was going away with them on Boy Scout Jamboree, and kept talking about it. And he says, "I can't wait to go on vacation." It's it was May, early morning, May 19th. I think Anthony was going on vacation, maybe a week or two later. And then the call came over, and I answered the radio, and they said that there was a call of a robbery in progress, top floor apartment, penthouse apartment on the 10th floor. No further. Female caller hung up. So myself and Anthony, we drove to the front of the location. Two other officers pulled up. One of them I'm still very friends with today, police officer Vincent Fittipaldi. And I asked, I went on the radio and I asked, we're in front of the location. Do you have any further? So they said, which was weird. The 911 operator says she can't talk to you because she said the perpetrator took the phone from her. So I thought right away, we thought that maybe this was some sort of domestic. So it was one of these high-rise apartments, which was, you had to push the intercom, the button to get into the lobby. And then the elevator, they would bring you up in the elevator to the floor. And when the elevator doors opened up, that was the front door going into the apartment. They were big luxury apartments. So we started pushing all the buttons below the 10th floor, and some person answered on the 3rd floor, and we said we needed to get in. And she said, like you say, "How do I know you're the police? Look out the window." That's what we always said. Look out the window, see the police cars. So we got buzzed in, and the 4 of us walked into the lobby. Never forget, there was a stairwell door. And Anthony went over and he pulled on the stairwell door to check it, and it was locked, of course. So we all got in the elevator. We didn't want to go straight up to 10. So we figured we hit the 3rd floor, with the person who let us in, to find out, do you know the people that live up there? Stuff like that. And there was nothing else coming over the radio. We couldn't get up. The elevator, we knew we had to be let up. So Anthony turned to me and he said, what was the number you pushed again? And I said, 3. He went out to hit the button. The elevator doors closed, and we started going up without Anthony. So I radioed to him, and I said, "Anthony, we're going up." He goes, "Okay, I'll stay in the lobby." So we opened, the elevator door opened up to the 3rd floor, and we were greeted by this woman, and I started to talk to her, and I just heard a terrifying woman's scream, high-pitched scream, terrifying, and she was being murdered. So I turned, and we all turned, and I said, "We need to get up to the 10th floor." So she opened up from her apartment. They also have access to the stairwell. Mm-hmm. So we ran from the 3rd floor, the 3 of us, all the way up to the 10th floor. There was the stairwell door entering the 10th floor apartment, and then there was a push alarm door to the roof. So we listened. We couldn't hear anything. We were all out of breath, but our adrenaline was going. And one of the officers said, "I'll stay here. You guys go back down, and we're going to go out on a fire escape." So me and police officer Vincent Fittipaldi, who I'm very good friends with, I still talk to today, like everybody else but him, we went back down, and I told the woman, "We got to get out on the fire escape. We got to get up there." I had to get up there. Didn't hear any more screaming. So she went through the bedroom. She opened up the window, and we went out into the fire escape. So as we went up the fire escape, it's not that easy. You got your flashlight, you're holding your gun. The fire escapes, West 18th Street, they're old, they're kind of crooked. You have to be careful. People are, especially when it's dark.
Right.
And we started up towards the top, and I just remember seeing this woman. She was coming down the stairs, and she was dressed like in her underwear and whatever, and she's ripping this big, thick gray duct tape off her face, and she had it on her wrists. So she's screaming to me, "You got to get in there. You got to get in there." And I'm like, "All right." And I sat her down on the fire escape. And Vinny was looking up with his flashlight, and I radioed immediately. And I said, "We've got something going on here." So I said, "Listen," I says, "does he have a gun? What's he look like? How many perps are there?" She goes, "I don't know. He's wearing a mask." I'm like, "Oh, that's good." I says, "Does he have a gun?" She says, "Yes, he has a gun." I says, "Okay, fine." So I had radioed at that point, more, "Get everybody here." And Anthony radioed back to me and said, "Roy, I'm in the lobby." So, okay. And I told him where the other officer was, where we left him. And we went up, and the perpetrator turned out all the lights in the apartment. So it was completely dark. So we were looking in, and I could see that when the woman ran out, she had locked the bathroom door. And, at this point, we just yelled in, "Police, we know you're in there. We know you're armed. Don't do anything stupid." So we entered, and I turned the light on the bathroom. I unlocked the door, and there was another individual laying on the floor, totally taped all around. He had a beard, and he had long hair, and he was tied behind his back. I was able to talk to him afterwards, and during the trial, and I just took my whole hand and I ripped it right off his face. I know I took some hair with me, and I said, "Where is the perpetrator?" And he says he went to the elevator, and he's got my gun. I said, "So now he's got 2 guns." He goes, "Yeah." "Okay, you know what he looks like?" "No, he's wearing all black. He's got a ski mask." "All right, not a problem." I get to the elevator, and all I remember was I was going to open up the stairwell door, to open it up to let the officer in, and the elevator doors were starting to open, and some officers and a sergeant got off, and all of a sudden I just heard, bang, 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 bang. And I immediately opened the door, and it was like somebody just finished a cigarette. It was a heavy, heavy smell of gunpowder.
Mm-hmm.
So we all proceeded out into this foyer, and the officer had taken cover or whatever he did, but the alarm on the roof door was still not engaged, wasn't engaged or anything. So I had my back to all of them, and people were screaming from the street, "He's on the roof, he's on the roof." So I'm sitting there and I'm arguing that no, I was right there. I go, "It's got to be lower." And I went to turn to go down the stairs to go to the floor below, which would have been the 9th floor. And they said, "Roy, we're all going to the roof." So we all got up to the roof. And what I had done, I had turned my radio down, because when I was entering, the apartment, you do it because you don't, it's a tactic where you don't, when you have your radio blaring. But we already yelled in, and again, this is what happens with cops, second guessing what they did. But when I turned my radio down, I found out later on that Anthony was trying to reach me, and at that point, I couldn't answer him because I turned my radio down. So finally, when I turned it up and everything was going on, we had gone to the roof, and we decided to take. There was no connecting buildings, so I kept saying, "The perpetrator's got to be in the building. He's got to be in the building. I know he's in the building." So we decided to take the fire escape back down to the back, yard there, and there was other cops back there. So when we went into the basement of the building, there was blood. There was a trail of blood. So I went over the radio and I said, there's blood in the basement. And the 911 operator said to me, I got a call that there's blood on the 3rd floor. So I went, all right, and whoever I was with, because cops were everywhere at this point, we came up, went through the lobby, were able to access the stairs, and started up the stairs. And I remember police officer Dave Ned, who I'm still good friends with. He was a police officer in the 6th precinct at the time. And like I said, back in those club days, the Limelight and in the 6th, we were always, that's how we got to know each other, because you always responded across the border. And I looked up and I saw him, and I saw Vinny Fittipaldi and a couple other police officers. And Dave screamed at me, get out of the way. And I looked, and they were holding Anthony. So I looked at his face, and I said, that's my partner. So right away I grabbed him by his head, and I was like holding him by his head, and we were holding him, and we were going down the stairs, and we were running down the stairs like from the 3rd to the main lobby so fast we almost dropped him. Sure. And tragedy makes you a joke, because we always said, Dave says, I always remember how I said, Dave, remember we almost dropped Anthony, and the thing was, though, when we got into the lobby, it was just completely loaded with emergency service, EMS, supervisors, cops, everybody. Everybody just seemed to stop. I could say it to this day. Everybody just froze for that 1 minute. We were coming out holding him, and I'm holding his head. Dave's holding him, and we're all holding him, and we're trying to get out. And everybody just, what upset me more about that was I just think seeing everybody else's shock, where everybody just stood. I don't think anybody could really experience that, but I did. Just the shock of everybody just standing in place as we're coming out screaming, we got a cop shot. Now, I didn't know where he was shot. So got out into the ambulance. I had let go him for a minute. I turned to Vinny, and it's what we do. It's not Anthony, Vinny. Vinny, tell me it's not Anthony. Please tell me it's not Anthony. He was just, like the rest of us. He says, Roy, I don't know. I remember I looked at him. He goes, I don't know. So I jumped in the ambulance and got in the back with him. And I think it was 2 paramedics. And they started ripping at his uniform. So I went up to him, and I put my hands in, and I leaned down. I said, where are you shot, Anthony? And then his eyes started to go a little white. And then the paramedic basically took his fist, bang, knocked me right back and said, sit down. The best thing you could do for us now is just let us work on him. Which, to this day, I would have did the same thing. So they were going to rip his jacket apart, and he just bought the jacket. So I told him, I said, please, give me his jacket. They gave me his jacket. And ride to St. Vincent's Hospital. I got his jacket, his wallet, and his boot. So they ripped apart his uniform pants. And when I saw his underwear was stained with blood, I knew it was bad. I knew it was bad. So got to the hospital. They came rushing in, and I was with him. I wheeled him in. They were wheeling him right into surgery, and I just said, Anthony, everything's going to be all right. He says, I'll see you when you get out. So that was it. Took him away, and like I said earlier, we had a police officer, Joe Abruzzi, who me and Anthony and myself all got assigned to the 13th precinct together. 10 years later, he's the precinct delegate. And me and him and Anthony, we hung out many times, went to weddings, everything together over those 10 years. He came in and he said, he's gone. He's gone, Royce. He's gone. So I think what it was that you talk about getting kicked in the stomach twice. I took my hands and I grabbed my hair, and I grabbed my hand. I had my blood on his hands, and I just remember not remembering much after that. But the thing was, I said, you got to get a hold of yourself, Roy. And it was just like that. It was gone. It was done, over. And that was it. And right afterwards, it was, it started. You're with somebody and, you're envious of him. You're his brother, you're his friend, and, your kids and everything else and christenings. And now he's gone. And I think my first thing was fear. It was normal with it was fear. You have the fear, and everybody else felt the same. But
of course, yeah, it's understandable.
You have the fear, and then was at the hospital, and they wanted to admit me, and I didn't want to be admitted. And I said, no, I want to go back and be with the officers. And it was just to explain, like when I got back there, it was like you knew the support was so much there, but now it's now, Roy, it's been X amount of hours. It's not the same, it's not the same, and it wasn't. And it just, everybody was affected. Everybody was so affected. And I think one of the first things was that I noticed was Gramercy Park, the Block Association, and the community itself just came out full support that very morning. It was unbelievable. The president, Arlene Harris, who I'm good friends with.
Great lady.
Yeah, she was, they all were. Because see, what it was that, Anthony, working the midnight, she got to know the bouncers. She got to know the doormen. You got to know, the regular recidivists that were always breaking into cars and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then, when, they heard about it, what do you do? It's like, it's tough to cope. It's like, he's gone, and, everybody was just like, they were shocked, but they all came together, and everybody was so nice. And I got to commend Arlene Harris and the Gramercy Block Association. They really, 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 from the beginning, not only for Anthony and his family, but for me, they did it for me too, which was important because, I had the support of the police department and my family and everything, but that was also something I'll cherish for the rest of my life because they were very, very good. And, we got the street renamed and, all that. But it was the problem that I think happens is that I tell people in peer groups is that people do two things. They wish they could have did something else. They wish they could have been there. They wish they weren't on vacation. They wish they could have been. You can do that for your whole life. It's not going to change anything. Right. People, just were grieving and traumatized. And for me, I think the hardest part was that I noticed, like when we started right from going down to court, and Kerry O'Connell, who's a good friend of mine, she was the ADA. When I first went in to meet her, I was all so upset when I first went in to meet her when she was the prosecutor that was handling the case. I had a loose button on my jacket. She goes, "Give me a jacket," and she sewed it for me. God bless you, Kerry. She was the best, and she did an awesome job. But when we first started going down there, a lot of us that were involved, I noticed that a lot of my coworkers were kind of shying away from me. So it would, upset me. Of course, and I talked about Dave Ned, who was the one that tried desperately to save Anthony, like Vinny and the rest of them, carrying him down the stairs. I was in front of court with him, and I asked him, I said, "Dave, what's going on?" Right away you think, like, so bad. Like, maybe they think that I did something wrong, and they're mad at me. It's the trauma. It does it, And Dave said to me, he said, "Roy," he goes, please don't take it personal. He goes, "Every time they see Anthony, they see you with him. Now he's not with you."
Yeah.
So, like myself, it's tough because you guys were always together, and so I had to get used to that, and eventually, you learn to support one another. But right from the beginning, that I think was the hardest thing that I could cope with was, that, because it just, what it is to have trauma and PTSD and stuff, because it's just, it doesn't, you have to learn right from the beginning that, okay. And like I said, it was very, very hard. And the trial was very hard. My testimony was horrible. I had to go in, and I remember I held up his jacket that he was wearing that night for the jury, staring at that arrogant perpetrator, that murderer.
Piece of crap.
Just standing there looking at him. It was funny when I was on the stand. I remember I kept looking at him, and he kept putting his head down. He wouldn't look at me when I was on the stand.
Yeah, he's a coward.
One of the old-time court officers, he was a legend down there. He would walk me out. We took a break because I broke down on the stand, give my testimony. Mm-hmm. And he used to say to me, "Don't let this blanking guy bother you." I says, "He ain't bothering me. I'm bothering him."
Good.
So, yeah. So it was tough. It really was, horrible. But I took from all that, and I started, like I explained to you, that how I used it to help others. You had to do it. And, his wife Liz and myself, we were we went away together. We like I said, we socialized together outside of work. And I think the whole funeral thing was, hard enough, but when they came up to me and said that John, who was only 6 at the time, wants to ride in the back of a police car to the church, Roy, will you do it? And John knew me, since he was a baby. I know he's only 6, but he knew me, and I did it. Everybody says I wouldn't, I couldn't, and I got in the back of the police car with him, and it was quiet. Everybody saluting, and the hearse and families, and we're in the police car, and I'm in the back with John. And, God bless that. I still, I've spoken to John, but God bless. He, even as a young child, he we're holding his hat. We had his hat. His mother gave him his father's hat. And, John held my hand, and he knew as a 6.5-year-old child, that he was giving me support. My partner's son was giving me support in that car going to that church, Babylon, and that also helped me. All that, as bad as it is, believe it or not, it strengthens you. It really does.
Oh,
it
yeah.
does strengthen you. And Scott Schneiderman was convicted. I think he said during his closing statement some line. He mentioned that I had to live with my lies. And, it was just, I was glad it was over. And I was glad he was going to jail for the rest of his miserable life.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was the closure, at that time was the closure for a lot of us. It really was.
Mm-hmm.
I know old news footage, I donated a lot of the footage I had from the news, including Anthony's jacket. I know I sent you a picture of it. We put his actually jacket he was killed in.
Let's pull up a picture of that, producer Vic, if you don't mind. Should be towards the bottom of this. There we go. There's the jacket.
Yeah, it was the jacket he was killed in, and basically we had put shield and his medals just like he would have been, and I donated it to the National Law Enforcement Museum in Washington D.C. Hopefully, we can do something after this to get it maybe displayed once in a while because I think it's important. Like I said, it was a closure for a lot of us. It really was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Scott Schneiderman is dead, and I say that happily. He died in 2002 of AIDS, and obviously AIDS is bad, but this is the one time I'm actually happy AIDS killed someone, because if anybody deserved that kind of a fate, it was him. And you know what? Listen, to tell you to do the comparison, how many people are talking about him all these years later compared to how many people are talking about Anthony?
Oh God, no.
Goes to show. Quality of one person up here, quality of other person all the way down here. And I want to thank you for telling that story because you know what? And this is hitting different for me. Excuse me, because it's been a couple months since I lost my grandfather. He passed away back in July. And when you go through, and I think this is something that Victor and I, my producer, were talking about the other day. When you go through any kind of adversity, right? Talking to you guys, talking to my friends in the FDNY that went through some of the terrible things in their own right. You can go one of two directions. Either you can shrink and kind of drown yourself in the sorrow. Some guys hit the bottle. Some guys get into some other unhealthy, self-destructive stuff. Or you can do what you're doing, which is, holy crap, I've been through this terrible thing. But once I've regrouped myself and made my peace with it as best you can, let me help others. And that, you know what? If I had a cap on right now, I tip it to you, my friend, because the fact that you're able to take something like that and help others, you know what? To say that that's a wonderful thing to come out of such a freaking tragedy is an understatement. So kudos to you.
Oh, no, thank you. I mean, a funny story. When you said Schneiderman died, I was home watching Escape from Alcatraz when I got the phone call from police officer Joe Abruzzi. He was a 13th precinct delegate, and he had told me that he had died. So I called Liz. I said, he goes, no, I figure you want to call her and tell her.
Yeah.
So what had happened was the DA had released his property, which included his uniform, his jacket, his gun belt, and everything else that was evidence. So shortly after Anthony was killed out where he lived, because Anthony was a proud Long Island native.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, he was. We never got to see Billy Joel, but one thing we had in common, he was a big Billy Joel fan, and I was too. But
hey, listen, who isn't? I love the guy.
Yeah, so they named the park out in Babylon, which is still there today. Police Officer Anthony Sanchez Park and Pool. I think I sent you a picture of it.
Yep, we have that picture too. If you can pull that up.
Yeah, they do cleanups out there from the community.
There it is.
That was a local volunteer fire. They're like the cadets.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I knew the woman's name. God bless her that ran it. And they went out every year in the spring, and they would clean out there in the pool. But going back, when Anthony's uniform was given to us, I told his wife we'll properly dispose of, his ripped up bloody shirt and everything else in the pants. So what we did was we went out to the park and we did like a controlled, burn, and we disposed of the uniform, and we buried the ashes on the side of the park. And it's funny, that's where Anthony's playground is today. So yeah, so I always say, you know what, he's there watching over all the children, because they blacktopped it and they built a beautiful playground there. It says Anthony Sanchez Park, playground. And every time I've gone out to the park out there, I always look. I said, yeah, that's where we did it. And of course, like his jacket, I wanted to preserve that because it was important to do it. You know what I'm saying? I felt it was.
Yeah.
And like I said, the community with such outpouring and going to the park and speaking and it just it makes you feel like proud, very proud.
Yeah, as you should be. As you should be. Hey, Vic, pull that. I want to say something real quick. Pull that picture of Anthony's uniform back up, because this is going to go out to all the young cops or people that are thinking about becoming cops. For those of you that are going to watch this on YouTube, maybe you're new on the job, maybe you're thinking about coming on the job, take a good look. I want you to take a real good look at this uniform, okay? This is the job right here. This is what the job's all about. Charisma, guts, and the goal, no matter what the situation is, the courage to march into any kind of danger. Did Anthony care if these people were rich or poor? No. And neither did Roy, neither did any of the other officers that responded that night. The point is, they knew people were in trouble, and they went to help. And that uniform right there symbolizes exactly that. He slapped it on that night, and what was his goal? His goal wasn't to go sit in the patrol car and have a cup of coffee and wait until the tour to be over. No. Of course, cops want quiet tours. You don't want chaos to be enveloping the city. But if a call comes over for help, that's the uniform you put on. That's the cape. That's better than Superman's cape. And I love Superman. It's better than Batman's cape. And I love Batman too. But it ain't got nothing on that uniform right there. So when you put that uniform on, rather if you're on the job or if you're thinking about coming on the job, wear it with the same pride he did. And take a good look at it, because that is the uniform of a hero. Thank you, Vic, for the picture.
And thank you for that. Thank you. You said it very well. That's perfect.
And your career it's at an interesting point in 1997, because you're halfway through, right? You're halfway through the journey, and this
top of the world,
right? And then something like this happens, and you spent some time in auto crime, which is something that, as you mentioned earlier, Anthony wanted to go there, and it was.
I know that when I was told, I was I went to see Commissioner Safer,
yes,
and First Deputy Commissioner Patrick Kelleher, both very supportive. Like the whole department was, but for that high up on the police department, the commissioner, especially the first deputy commissioner, very supportive, and I went in and sat down, and they told me, we think we send you auto crime. And I'm thinking, okay, Anthony, you got me there. I'm going to auto crime. I think it was kind of a shock when they said it to me, because I didn't know what to expect, but that's where I went, and I worked there for 3 years, and I got promoted there, and I worked with some fine men and women there, and I didn't really know anything about cars, and you have to have you learn, but the men and women at that time that worked there, because there was still a lot of chop shops and cutting out airbags and a lot of stuff
selling
going on.
Parts in the black market.
Yeah, that and those detectives that I had a pleasure of working with that worked there. They really knew their stuff when it comes to that. And I was there for 3 years, and police officer that I worked with, she passed away, Eileen Corrigan.
Yes, yes.
And
9/11 related illness, I believe, right?
I can't remember, but she was also part of our group that came in
Mhm.
and hurt me dearly. She was
Mhm.
such a beautiful woman, so
Yes.
funny, everything. And went to the wake, and some of my colleagues that were cops with Anthony were now up in the 13th Precinct Detective Squad. So I wanted to go back, and first they were a little hesitant about it.
Yeah, yeah.
It was tough. Anthony was killed May 19th, 1997, and then 2 months later, on July 18th, my father dropped dead of an aneurysm.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. That's terrible.
Yeah, and unexpected, and
Jeez.
he was buried on my birthday, which is July
Uh,
22nd. I was supposed to go to while I was out in employee relations. I was supposed to go. I laugh about it because it's a story of my life. I was supposed to go to psych services, to do my visit because they were concerned,
mhm.
and I missed my appointment because of my father's death and funeral. So of course, when I went in there, how you feeling? Well, my father just passed away. Oh, really? So how you doing? "Nah, I'm doing all right."
It's kind of like an other. What's the joke? Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Yeah. So it was
Yeah.
kind of so it's kind of funny about it was I always tell people they wanted to have me stay out longer. I wanted to get back to work. So like I tell people, oh, I'm sorry, my iPad
You're
fell.
good.
What
You're
I
all right.
what I what I said, I always tell people is that you don't have to depend on the department. Nobody's going to do that to you. If you want to seek any type of psychiatric counseling privately, by all means, it's your right and it's private.
Mhm.
And that's what I did.
You got to
That's
be
what I did.
protective of up here.
Mhm. And it was like people get afraid. And I said, there's nothing to be afraid of. Please, if you need counseling, you need to speak to somebody, and you don't, the job, you don't have to go through the job. And if you go private, that's your business. Like what you do privately is your business. So if you want to go, you know, for counseling, and I think everybody thinks that it's going to go against them, and it's not like that. That's what I did, and I was able to go back, and I was assigned to auto crime, and that's where I worked and got promoted in 1999. So yeah, so eventually I did a little push and shove. I was able to go back to the 13th
13th.
squad, and I worked with a lot of the officers a lot of detectives that I was officers with, including partner of mine I'm still friends with today, Detective William Hamilton, Willie, and we worked together in the squad. And you know, it was a good 5 years, and then unfortunately there was another incident.
And I'll get to that
Yeah.
around 2004. And you know what? Going back there was good because even though it was only 3 years after police officer Sanchez's murder in 1997, you don't want to end your tenure there on that kind of a note because you had a great time at the 13th. It was a great command, and to go back there was kind of coming full circle in a much better way. But before I get to that 2004 incident, right, and we talked about this off the air.
Yeah.
Right when I feel the 13th was starting to kind of make peace with Anthony's murder comes 9/11, and it hits truck one. Brian McDonald, who was an
Yeah.
emergency service cop in truck one, is killed. And
Yeah.
Moira Smith and Bobby Fazio, who knew Anthony and definitely knew you from the
Yes.
13th, who were among the first police officers from the NYPD to get down to the World Trade Center that day, get
Correct.
killed, are among the
Correct.
23 police officers from the NYPD to die that day. So
Yes.
talk again, it's another gut punch, and it's tough. And I have a picture
Yeah.
of Bobby at Anthony's funeral. And before you comment, for those of you that would like to see it, this is police officer Robert Fazio, who was one of the 23 New York City police officers to die in 9/11. This is him crying at Anthony Sanchez's funeral a few years prior in 1997. And of course, similar tears will be shed for him. So to lose, and I don't know if you knew Brian, but I know you knew Moira and Bobby quite well. To lose those two, right on the heels of Anthony. Tell me about that process of coming to terms with their losses.
Well, it was funny because Bobby, he had a few years in the 13th prior to me and Anthony getting there.
You got there in '84, yeah.
Yeah, 84, and we got there in 88. So he was considered, believe it or not, one of the senior officers. And for some reason, I gained a nickname there. My name is Roy, and they called me Cowboy Roy.
Could be worse.
Yeah, it worked. So Bobby was one of those. He called me by Cowboy. Hey, Cowboy. Hey, what's up, Cowboy? So I remember I was walking back from a demonstration, and I was going back to the 13th, and I'm walking, and I see a van pull up, and who's driving the van but Bobby Fazio. So I jump in. This is how I met him. And I jump in. He says, "Hey, how you doing?" I says, "Good." He goes, "I'm Bobby. I'm in C-Pop." I said, "Hi, I'm Roy. I told him what squad I'm in. He always said, "Oh, you're in, Mike Lackwood's squad. He's a great guy." Okay. So he drives up. I remember he gets to like 23rd Street. He's all right. Get out here. I said, "Well, I thought you're taking me back to the command." He goes, "No, there's a DOA that's been there for quite a while. And if you walk into the 13th now, they're going to send you over to it. So go hang out, do what you got to do, and walk back." And that's how I met Bobby. And that picture of Bobby with Anthony, I think that was one of the I didn't know until that was brought to my attention, because again, when Anthony was killed, Bobby was very, very upset. He talked to me about it a few times. It was emotional.
I can imagine.
And the thing was, lo and behold, that, I was going to experience another tragedy, with 9/11. Just to make, Moira, she was transit. Her husband, Jimmy, I couldn't say anything nicer about them. After Anthony was killed, during the funeral service, during the wake, afterwards, I really got to know Moira. And it turned out she lived in the same neighborhood in Brooklyn, like blocks away from, I think, where my grandmother was, where I went to as a child in the 70s. But I got to know her pretty well, because the support, she was, a lot of, just a lot of people. And I think what Bobby was very upset about Anthony. And, he specific, not to really get into it because it's too emotional to talk about. But
I understand. You don't have to.
he just, he shared with me. Once was on the train. I think he was living in Long Beach or Rockville Center. I can't remember.
Yes.
And we were on the train, and it was just the two of us. And Bobby was telling me, just how he is just beside himself. And then, 9/11, then happened. And I was down there on a Friday looking for a perpetrator who beat up his girlfriend in a drug-induced rage. And they told me that he begged at the South Tower in the morning about 8 o'clock. And I went down there with another detective that Friday.
Before 9/11.
Right before. Buildings came down on a Tuesday. I was there on a Friday because I was off Sunday, Monday. So the Port Authority police officer I called knew who he was and said, if I see him there, I'll grab him. But he's usually down there panhandling. So I walked down there. I mean, it was a beautiful Friday morning. And, I walked around. I remember I said to myself, because I was there at the first, bombing, you couldn't get a car near the place. You had to
not after that.
Yeah, you couldn't. And I remember commenting with the other detective I was with. And I remember we walked through, and they had, the big sphere that was there with all the chairs. Lo and behold, a few days later, Tuesday, the towers came down. And, God, I said to myself, I was going in for a 4 to 12. So I said, I probably would have been down there that morning looking for the perpetrator again. So, they came down. I went in in for that 4 to 12, and it was just unbelievable. And that's when I heard that, Moira and Bobby were missing. and a lot of other officers and personnel were missing. And
Yep.
they sent me to Beekman Downtown Hospital to the temporary morgue, and then we ended up going back, and then we ended up after midnight. I was back up at the Bellevue morgue, and it was nonstop. I think corrections was doing a lot of the transport. I always remember them being there and, taking the bodies and the remains out to go into the morgue for identification. And then, when I went to the landfill, it was like the first couple of days that they actually started doing the detail at the landfill. And, we were there and, there was remains found and, I went back to the morgue. So I liked work. The morgue was better than driving to Staten Island, but I didn't mind doing any of it at all. But I think the hardest thing was they gave us all the scrubs at the morgue, like the pants and this, like doctors would wear. And the commanding officer, I think it was from Missing Persons. He was such a nice gentleman, big tall guy, and he was in charge there. And he said, if you're coming back, take this stuff home with you, wash it, do whatever, so you have it. So I would wear it, and I would walk, 30th Street all the way up towards Penn Station, and people grabbing me. Flyers, because they knew where I was coming from. Missing, please, here's his picture.
Yeah.
There was a woman, she had a hairbrush in a baggie for DNA. She's trying to give it to me. What do you do, right?
Exactly.
I don't want to tell her no, but what am I going to do with it?
Right.
It was horrible. And I went back and I was there that morning, and the call came in that Bobby was found. So I ran up and I let everybody know in the front of the morgue, because there was a process when remains would come in, photographs, dental, everything else. I went up and I said, I worked with him. He's my friend. So like, fine, no problem. So you gonna be all right? I says, I'm used to this. They brought him in, and
It's understandable.
they brought him in, and we had to do what we had to do. And it was hard. And I stayed with him, and I helped fingerprint him, and I made sure that until he was done. And the girl, we got to go out. Who's standing there? Police Officer Joe Bruce.
Full circle.
We got to stop meeting like this, Joe, right? And
Yeah.
God bless him too. And they had the funeral, the hearse, and everything ready to go. And I remember after Anthony was killed at the wake, I think it was an emergency service police officer. He had come up to me and he said to me, look, I just want to let you know that after your partner had passed, they had to do an investigation, including an autopsy. And he said, I stayed with your partner the whole time, during it, afterwards, until it was claimed by the family. So I think that's what I want. I knew that's what I had to do, what I was going to do anyway. And went to the wake, and I met his family, and they talked about Anthony.
Yeah.
That's like, that's the hardest thing, too, because now they're suffering their tragedy, and they're letting me know. I remember how my son or my brother felt when Anthony was killed, and I knew it. And I just said, look, I was with him. And
That's important.
yeah, that kind of, after that, 9/11 and me, I just, between the landfill, the morgue, ground zero, when you're dealing with a lot of remains. And I remember one of the stories was fireman had been brought in, and it was very emotional. And all his colleagues were coming in, they found whoever they found, and he was not recognizable, as far as. So I remember one of the brother firemen from his house came up to me and he says to me, his jacket had a name on it. So they said, this is his name, and he's got a distinctive tattoo on his arm. So got that acetylene stuff, and as they were doing the ME and then we're doing on, I'm wiping away, we're pouring and wiping, and no, there was no tattoos. And what it was I found out later on that was, that you would run out when all these firemen were running to the scene. They would each grab each other's jackets accidentally, and I assumed that's what had happened. But it's things like that bothered you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that you try, while there. I think I had the mode that you're going to try to help everybody you can and try to ID as many people as you can, but and helping in the process. That's what I was there for. But unfortunately, it was what it was. You know what I'm saying? Just a horrible thing. Horrible.
Yeah, and I go back to something Kenny Winkler, who you probably remember from One Truck, mentioned to me from one of my ESU interviews I did a little while ago, that the 14 emergency service officers, excuse me, they got sent in there. They were in there because they were sent in there, and I'm not minimizing their loss in any way. Of course, they did a great job, and their sacrifice is just as heroic and just as sad, of course.
Yes.
But they, their function. What's their function? Situations like that, to do rescues, to slap on that Scott pack and go up those stairs, which is exactly what they did. But
Right.
He made a point to mention the other 9, which includes Bobby and Moira, that they didn't have the same training that we did. They didn't have to go in there, but they did. Why?
No.
Because it was about being a cop first. You think of Moira, think of Bobby, Jimmy Leahy from the 6th Precinct,
Mm-hmm.
Mark and Ray from Transit District 4,
Yes.
Danny Richards from the Bomb Squad.
Yes.
You had Timmy Roy as well. And for goodness sakes, John Perry, who was retiring. The man was retiring.
Yeah.
And he could have easily put his papers in and said, okay, guys, it has nothing to do with me. He went down there. He helped out. Unfortunately, he lost his life. But that's just kind of like I talked about earlier with Anthony. It's the spirit of the job. And the job can throw you a lot of curveballs. So, that brings us to 04. And here you are. I think it's on 7th Avenue. And listen, you did what you had to do. This is where, unfortunately, 7th Avenue became the OK Corral for a moment.
Yes. It's an incident with all my other incidents. You try to bury, but my partner William Hamilton, we were all cops together. He had about 6 months more than me and Anthony, so we all worked together. And then, when I went to the squad, Willie was already there as a detective, and he was going out to retrieve a photograph of a perpetrator who had just pistol whipped a coworker, and at a bike messenger service.
Jeez.
And we were just going to go get a photograph, and we ended up driving over, and we went into the service, and as the manager was giving the information to my partner, one of the bike messengers said, "Oh, the guy you're looking for is standing up on the corner." So he was up on a corner, and I said, how do you want to do this? So we'll go up like we're businessmen going to the train. We
you got the suits on, it fits.
Yeah, we had the flip phones, walking. And we went, we got as close as we could to him. We grabbed him. He turned around, he pointed the gun right in my face. So I fired, and he went down. And the thing is what's funny about the police department is there's always somebody to let you know what you did wrong. It was like an old style Derringer gun.
Yeah.
Don't really want to get into the whole story about it because
That's fine.
But I'm saying that it misfired. But
Thank God.
They said to me, you should be, dead. The reasons and tactics or whatever,
Right.
And
Monday morning quarterbacking.
Yeah, the only I can make light on it was I think there was somebody from, I don't know, it was Channel 7 News. One of them said to me, if you can get a chuckle out of this, they said, your partner was killed on West 18th Street, 7th Avenue. You shot and killed the guy on West 24th Street, 7th Avenue. How do you feel? I said, I got to stay off 7th Avenue. And he got, I mean, come on. Come on, man. So, yeah, so that was kind of, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
People, my nickname was the Black Cloud. It was, all right, okay. Everything went good. Grand jury, no true bill. Everything was, thank God nobody else was hurt, and it was just one of those situations that, again, I tell people in, support groups, you just don't know, you think because you have one bad incident or one traumatic incident that another one's not going to happen for the rest of your life. Well, one may not, but some may come along quite a bit,
Yep. Oh, yeah. And it's how you deal with it, too. Glenn Klein, another friend of mine from emergency service, likened it to a sponge. And I love this analogy, and I steal it from him all the time. And I'm sorry, Glenn, but it's such a freaking good analogy that I have to steal it. That what happens when you're washing the dishes with the sponge? You squeeze it out. Most of that water comes out, but some of it stays in. It's the same thing with, and we all have it to different degrees. We all have stuff in our lives that's like, ugh, that was a terrible moment for me.
Yeah.
But, it sticks with you. So how you cope with it, like we talked about earlier, is definitely important. And let me just say, Cowboy Roy 1, perp 0. So that's good there. Thank goodness it misfired. Another miscreant off the street.
Yeah. Yes. So that, shortly after that, I had an opportunity to go to, they sent me to polygraph school, and I became a certified polygraphist. That'll be another podcast. I could tell you all about polygraphs. Everybody seems to be into. Nobody lies, right?
Right. It's so fascinating because I grew up watching Maury. The lie detector said you're telling the truth. That was a lie.
No, I that, like I said, that's too much. That would have to be another podcast.
That's
with that.
Oh, you're coming back. I'm bringing you back. We got some other stories to get to.
But just to go back before that, I had gotten a call, a few years after 9/11, and it was a lieutenant from Brooklyn South Patrol Bureau, and he told me that they were doing some sort of training with police officers, mostly rookies to like no more than 5 years, and they asked me if I wanted to come down and speak to them about what I went through with Anthony. And I said, by all means. And I had gone down there, and I went in and spoke to them, and basically the whole room was moved by it. And standing in the back, I didn't even know, came right up to me, was Chief Joseph Fox.
Great man.
Came right up to me, and he just was like, look, he just was beside himself. He said, that was so good the way you spoke. He said, would you mind doing it again? I said, sure, Chief. We have brand new rookie officers, and they're going to be assigned to Brooklyn South. And right when they get out of the academy, before they even go to their commands, they do a couple of days of orientation. So he invited me to come and speak with them. And I did it the first time, and it was tough. They're all brand new, but I was getting a message across. I was letting them know, if there's things out there. And, after it was over, some of them approached me. Women, men, having some issues, just got out of the academy, heard what I said on the stage. And some of them were really having some issues going on, like with family, and they were just, now they're brand new rookies going into, working, and it's stressful when you're new. And I felt good, telling them, look, if you need to talk, call me. If you need, there's services with the police department, Popper, there's police self-support groups. Please, don't be afraid. And I remember I got a call from the chief, and there was a young rookie officer that was assigned to that particular orientation. I think he was probably out on the street a week, and there was I believe it was a robbery in Brooklyn, and something with stolen cars, I believe. I can't remember. And he was new. So I said, all right, you stay here, you watch the cars. And one of the perpetrators had the to come back to get one of the cars. Ended up pulling a gun and wounding this young officer. So it was non-life threatening, but he was in Kings County Hospital. So Chief asked me, can you come and visit with him? I said, by all means. So I walk in the room, and he's there with his family. And the first thing he does is he turns and he goes, oh, this was the detective I was telling you about. His officer was police officer Anthony Sanchez that was shot and killed. So next the family goes, oh, I remembered him. Yeah, tell them the story. I said, look, I am not going to tell the story about Anthony Sanchez with this poor guy recovering from a gunshot wound.
Yeah. Maybe another time.
Yeah, I just, it made me stronger because, again, as much as tragedy is and trauma and PTSD, which a lot of people try thinking by forgetting it and putting it out of their mind, you can't. So what it is when you expose yourself, you feel. And I just remember that one particular incident with that young officer. Actually, I went in there with butterflies in my stomach, and I was so nervous and, thinking about back what I went through with Anthony. And then I go into this, hey, tell a story. Oh, I remember, they were just so nice. They really were. And, I continue to do it, for the chief. And I was really happy that I got letters that I still save that they wrote, they critiqued the orientation. Everything would always be blank. And then that was a big page for me, which made me feel good. You feel like you're doing something,
Right, you are.
Yeah.
You are. It's, what, like I said earlier, it's important they hear these stories because, listen, there's a lot of highs with the job. Same thing in the fire department. There's a lot of highs with the job. There's also a lot of lows. There's some really, really difficult moments, things you see, things you endure. It's traumatic. It can be traumatic. So, it's helping you to get it out, and it's helping them, too, to understand this is the job. This is the reality. So, like I said, I give you a lot of credit for that. And in 2005, your last stop was Major Case.
Yes.
Which, man, again, they put the M in Major Case, a lot of kidnappings, certain bank robberies. You work with the FBI. This is, if you're a detective and you want to work, this is one of the places to be. So getting there, a lot of it to do with your polygraph expertise.
Yes.
Tell me about, going there, even though you had experience as a detective by this point, this is something entirely new. Did you feel like a rookie all over again?
No, not really. When I got there, I took the whole polygraph thing hook, line, and sinker. And, I was greeted again by so many, officers and detectives and my boss personally that worked there. And I felt at this point like, okay, this is pretty good. I'm doing polygraphs. I was turning out of a task force building in Rosedale where I grew up. And
nice.
I was very happy there, and I was close to home. My career was winding down, and I thought, like, wow, I think I could do 25 years. And then again,
November 28th, 2005.
Yeah, that changed me for good. That was the hardest thing for me because that happened, and it was funny. Like, I have no problem in telling the story. I really don't tell it that much, but I think it's important. I was thrown right back into the mix. And, I just, the thing was, I had the experience, but in the same sense, the trauma was just double. It was just,
Yeah.
and,
And before you continue, just to
yeah,
let the audience know what we're talking about. So November 28th, 2005, Dillon Stewart's a police officer. I think this is in Brooklyn, if I remember correctly. And he's got about 5 years on the job. And he pulls up next to a car. Car might have been wanted in connection with another crime that had just occurred. And as they pull up next to it, one of the perps that's in the vehicle starts firing into the car. And Dillon and his partner, are on the receiving end of the gunfire. I don't think his partner was struck. Dillon was wearing a bulletproof vest, but of course, in what is very cruel irony, the bullet hit him in the armpit, which wasn't covered by the vest, and traveled down his body and severed all the vital organs. Now, or one of the vital organs, I believe it pierced his heart. He
yeah,
didn't realize the severity of his injury because
no,
even though he was mortally wounded, this warrior chased these perps for
I know.
5 blocks. And
Yeah,
that's when he realized at the end of the 5 blocks how serious his injuries were. And they rushed him to the hospital where unfortunately he died.
Do you have a picture of that warrior to put up?
Yeah, let me find it real quick. Dillon
Yeah.
Stewart, who
He
puts
was-
the W in warrior. I'm going to display his photo momentarily.
He
This
actually,
guy.
yeah, he actually chased him.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Mortal wound and all. Heart
Yeah.
pierced by a bullet. And this gentleman who I'm going to display his photo momentarily was the one. And again, this is the job. This is what you want in a cop. This was Dillon Stewart. That photo right there. And he had a wife and 2 young children at home. And of course, despite that, he still wasn't hesitant to put his life on the line if need be. And he knew police work meant something. And he knew getting people like this off the street meant something.
Yeah.
And again, that's the thing that sticks with me, man. Gunshot wound to the heart. Still chasing these guys 5 blocks.
Yeah.
Warrior.
Yeah. So
Legend.
I was home, and it was early morning hours. I think it was after 4:00. I can't remember. It was in the morning. And I got a call from my boss, and he said to me, "How fast can you get to Kings County Hospital?" So I said, "I'm on my way." So got in the car and got to Kings County Hospital, and there was already detectives there, which were dedicated detectives that worked on that case from the very beginning. God bless them all. They were just, and I met them and I told them where I was from. So I said to them, I'll stay here. They had him in emergency surgery. I was right outside the door to the surgery room when they were desperately trying to save him. And the other detectives and stuff were doing what they had to do. And I thought for a minute, I kept asking, being a pest. I said, "How's things? And they said, he might be, stable." So I got that relief. And then, came out and said, not going well. So at this, I turned around and distinctly in the hallway of the, it's the ER. There's also hospital, beds and rooms. His family were there, and it was his wife, I believe, his sister and husband, and his mother. And they're in the hallway, and I just ran over, and it was an empty room. And I turned to, I forgot what deputy inspector, whoever that was there, and I said, "Can we put them in this room?" I says, "Please, let's get them out of the hallway, put them in a room." So we went into the room, and they told him he died. So the mother and the wife and everybody just, and I'm standing there, and I went to the wife, and I think the commissioner came and the mayor came, and I said, "Man, oh man," I said, "Come on." So they wanted to go in and say their goodbyes, and people have said to me after that, "I would have never done that." No. I said, I'm doing it for this.
It's a brother
hero.
officer.
Yeah, this is a hero, and I do it for anybody, So I had gone in and checked, and we went in and we said our goodbyes, and it was very emotional. And I think what happened was, I had his wife and I think she just had their. I think she gave birth to like I don't know if it's a second child. That really hurt. And
Yeah, he had two children, two daughters.
two daughters. I think one when he was killed tragically. I think his wife just gave birth to the second child. I'm not 100% sure, but the family had gone to the elevators, and I just stayed with her, and it was just me and her. And I said, all right, I'm gonna walk you to the elevator. And I know I have a picture of when Liz, myself, Anthony's funeral.
Yep.
Uh,
Allow me to find it momentarily. You can keep telling the story.
Yeah.
While I find it.
So I got up, and I ended up. I remember holding Dillon Stewart's wife like I was holding Liz as we were walking towards the elevator. And what was very incredible about it was, as I was holding her and I was walking her, I felt her emotion come right into me. I felt it. And I never felt anything like that ever again, but I felt it as I was walking with her. And all I said to her was, I said, I've been through this. We'll talk. And she was just like, it's hard to relive it, but I am for a reason. So I got into the elevator and we went down, and the elevator doors opened up, and there was a sea of press and police officers and everybody else. And who's standing there? Chief Joe Fox. They did all the speaking at the orientation. I made eye contact with him, and I just said, let me go. So I had gone back to the command, and I went up, and everybody was working so hard. So my boss came up to me and said, you better leave. And I go, leave? I'm going to stay. He goes, no, you better leave. I go, why? He goes, well, first of all, my CO got me and Anthony our first seat, which was, like I said, Chief of Detectives, Chief George Brown. He saw me, and he turned around and said to somebody, who sent Roy to the hospital? Out of all the detectives, you sent him? But it was my job, So, and then the second thing was, people watching this will laugh. My boss said to me, normally you never shut the blank up, but you haven't said a word in about the last hour and a half, so I think you better go. So I got outside, and I called my wife, and I was like, I'm done. It's done. I'm not going to do 25 because my luck, something else is going to happen.
Yeah.
And, I just,
I don't blame you.
Yeah. It's, but I used it to help, when I was on the job, and right till today, I like I said, I got involved with a lot of veterans groups. I was working with veterans. I was working with local community groups, and one that I'm very particularly fond of, which I wanted to mention, was in my town here in Oceanside, New York. There's a volunteer group called the Oceanside Community Warriors. And they're formed of, residents from the neighborhood. And what they do is they go out and they clean up the neighborhood. They, beautify the neighborhood. They plant flowers. They hang flags. And when I was assigned a major case, I had to go up to the bomb squad one night. And it's funny how things work. And I went up there. I can't remember why. I wrecked my brain. But they sent me up there. And I went up alone. I think it was fireworks I was dropping off.
Oh, yeah.
But I went up there, and one of the supervisors, he knew me. And he knew my brother Steve from Midtown South. So he was sitting there, and we started talking, and this gentleman walked out. And I remember he was pretty jacked guy. And he said, "You're from Oceanside?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "He's from Oceanside." And I said, "Oh, really?" And it was just small talk. That was Lou Alvarez.
Yeah. Was the supervisor Tony Biondolillo?
No, I can't remember I can't remember his name.
I remember because I think Tony was in Midtown South for a little bit.
It would come to me, but it's
yeah.
But it was funny because he was a big advocate for us
Yeah.
Lou Alvarez. And
Lou was great.
yeah, and,
Lou was a man's man.
yeah, and when he passed away, they dedicated a park, which is, on Terrell Avenue, right off of Atlantic Avenue in Oceanside. And I don't know if I sent you a picture of that one, Lou Alvarez Park, but these community warriors, these volunteers are unbelievable. They go and they decorate for Christmas. They do a spring cleanup. They do a fall cleanup. I actually had gotten 100 flags. And if I could let you know, anybody's welcome to do it between now and 9/11. We're going to go over to the park and we're going to, display the flags in the park. But, they do a lot. And there's also a 9/11 memorial at a schoolhouse green they take care of. And if anybody wants, please, it would do me a big favor if they donate to this organization that I help with. You can go on the Oceanside Community Warriors site on Facebook, or they could go on Oceanside Warriors New York. That's it right there, Oceanside Warriors New York at gmail.com.
Yep.
And like I said, it feels good that, you go out there and you do things and you talk to people, and they're doing such an awesome job. And, not only with Lou Alvarez Park and, and the Schoolhouse Green, but they really, beautify the community, and they're unsung heroes. They really are.
Yeah.
And, the last one that's been the most important to me was, you have the picture of me and my little buddy. There you go. That was me back in March in Colón, Puerto Rico. This was a rescue dog by the name of Phoenix that I took home from Puerto Rico to JFK to a foster family that was waiting. There is a very important organization that I'm involved with, and it's called Sky Animal Rescue by Stephen Bruno on the side in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, I've been there 4 times. I'm going back again in January. They suffered a lot during the hurricane. They got hit. They got hit pretty hard with, I forgot, it was Maria and what was the Fiona.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're still recovering. And these poor animals that are strays, they're injured, and Steve and his crew, they go out, and they're in desperate need of anything, funding for medicine, for help transport. They do all the paperwork to help you transport. It was easy to do, but everything from blankets to leashes to food, whatever people could donate on his end. On this end is Karen Miller. She would be on, she's in Long Beach, New York. And what I found a lot of times when I was with support groups, a lot of 9/11 first responders, veterans, because I did work with veterans, they find a lot of comfort and healing with, animals, especially dogs.
Mm-hmm.
The hard part is most of these dogs are rescue dogs. So they've been through terrible, traumatic experiences. And I just feel that, for people to give it a try and help, because it really helped me too, because you're helping rehabilitate and finding these animals a home, and it makes you feel good. So again, you can Venmo at Sky Animal Rescue, or it's his website is Sky Animal Rescue by Stephen at gmail.com. Very important to me. We're going to try to do an adoption event. I'm going to try to do one at Anthony Sanchez Park, and I want to do one at Lou Alvarez Park. But please, they're very important to me, both organizations. And when anybody could donate, they can. And if you want to lastly put up the picture of me and Anthony, which everybody knows, that was taken in 1994.
Let me see if I have that one.
That was the one of us in uniform.
This one? No.
Go back to that one. I took that picture because I said, "Look, we're in a radio car together. We're partners."
Here's the one from '94.
Yeah, that was there. There he is. Yeah. See, I still had the old jacket.
Yep.
So he had just gotten that new. That was in 1994.
Yeah, that's when you guys were making the switch from the what I call the Kansas City Royal Blue to the dark navy blues.
Yes.
It's funny.
Yeah. So like I said, help each other out there. If you're suffering from any type of depression, or you're not feeling 100%, or you feel you need to talk to somebody, please, you have my information. I always direct people. It's you don't have to get the job involved. You don't. Everybody feels like, well, if I say something, the job will find out. Retired guys are worried that if I say something, they'll come and take my guns. No, no, please. The best medicine is seeking counseling and help. And PTSD is real. Trauma is real. Everybody, I've met so many people that have had it. And I learned, like, people would come up to me and grab me on the side and say, look, I just want to say to you that, I went to school with your partner. I knew him, but I'm really sorry for bringing that up. I'm sorry. No, please. You're not talk about him. Please. You're not.
Keep the memory alive.
Yeah. Keep it alive. No, I'm not going to be offended. I'm not going to get upset. But there's people out there that think that, and with 9/11, with us first responders, I'm going to try my best, to try to work. There should be some sort of counseling or some sort of support groups for 9/11 responders. I mean, I tried to do it, but I got tied up with other things. I'm worried about my animals coming from my dog's coming from Puerto Rico. God bless you, Steve. But that's the best thing is to definitely, if you have you're not feeling well, or you have any sort of depression or something's bothering you, the best thing is to talk. And I learned from what I went through in my career is very emotional, but it feels good when over the years, people tell me, thank you, Roy. Thank you for helping, and, thank you for being what you're being, and, doing what you're doing. And, my attitude to them is, hey, as long as you have a smile on your face, I'm happy. That's it, Mike. That's
Well
it.
done. Well done, my friend. Well done. We have one segment that we always end with on the show, and it's the rapid fire. It's going to be 5 hit-and-run questions from me, and what a show this was. And 5 hit-and-run answers from me. You could say pass if you want. And the first one I'll give you is, and you don't have to pick just one, funniest call you ever responded to.
Funniest call I ever responded to was a person that said he was being robbed in a store on 14th Street. We got down there. We went in. It wasn't a robbery. The guy said that he paid $1.49 for a can of soup. Now it was $2.49. They're robbing him.
Well, he ain't lying. Second, funniest colleagues you ever worked with. You could say multiple.
Oh my God. God. Mike. Oh, there was so many of them. I think I spent the first 10 years of my career laughing. And poor Anthony, he had developed asthma when he got older. Mm-hmm. So when we used to crack jokes, I used to feel bad because he would laugh so hard he would start hacking. So we nicknamed him the Hacker. But there was so many, and they all. You look at every comedian today, from Ben Stiller to you name it. We had them all, just all those personalities. We had them, just think of every comedian. But there was so many of them. I couldn't specifically point out one.
No, that's fine. Listen, some of the funniest people you'll ever meet are first responders. Third, favorite cop show or a cop movie?
My favorite cop show was, believe it or not, Fort Apache, the Bronx.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, it's a classic. Yeah, it's a classic.
That one I like because, basically when I went on the job, like that scene when they're running after people in uniform and guys were still wearing white socks. I always loved that scene with Paul Newman, and he was chasing. He had the white socks on.
Yep.
No matter what you did, you always, whatever kind of socks you got. I don't know what they're like today. We always wore. I think we did it in defiance. So that was one of my favorite movies.
Love that one. I'm a big original Law and Order guy. I've said this before because Jerry Orbach was wonderful. And movie wise, it's got to be Rush Hour. Any, I don't care which one. Rush Hour 1, 2, or 3. I can watch them all.
Yeah.
I still laugh to this day, to the point where I start hacking because it's
Yeah,
that
yeah.
funny. This is another question that you don't have to say just one. You can say multiple if you want. Fourth, favorite bar or restaurant in New York City, anywhere.
My favorite bar and restaurant in New York City. Well, the one we went to, it's still there. Was Plug Uglies. It's actually
Yes.
it's on the other side of Third Avenue. I knew the Stapletons that had it. He was a fireman. That was one of my favorite bars. Let's see. I think some of them are probably gone. The 23rd Street Saloon was always a nice one, and the one on Irving Place, right on the corner there. I can't think of the name of it. Probably somebody will write it afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, and I'm sure I'll get done, and people are going to write me and say, "You didn't mention this place. You didn't mention that place."
We'll say all of them collectively.
All of them.
All of them.
All of them. Yeah.
Anyone you're thinking of?
Patty McGuire's was good too.
The one I've heard of.
Yeah, Patty McGuire's. He was another good place. Great place to go during Christmas. He decorates that place up beautifully. I don't know if you ever been there during the holidays.
No, I haven't.
You have to check it out. When you go, have the guys from Emergency Truck One take you over there and buy you a couple of drinks.
There you go. Greg Welch, Chris Williams, and Tommy Longa, if you're listening, take me down there. Especially you, Greg, because and knowing Greg, he'll get me into a lot of trouble, but B, it will be the most hilarious trouble you can think of because that's just the type of guy Greg is.
Yeah.
Love you, Greg. Fifth and finally, if you can grab a new cop that just graduated, they're fresh out the ceremony of Madison Square Garden, just toss their caps in the air, or the white gloves in the air, rather, I should say. What advice would you give them?
Expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
It's always there.
Pete's Tavern.
And don't take it personally.
Pete's Tavern.
Pete's Tavern. There it is. Pete's Tavern.
That
was always Anthony always liked the burgers in there.
I love burgers too.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. My advice to somebody brand new is expect the unexpected and be prepared. Be prepared if the worst comes, because it'll happen. That's that one I like. Thank you for that last one, because I always say that.
No problem. I always ask that to any cop or fireman I get on the show. I always make sure I ask that question. My brother, this was great. Don't say goodbye yet. We're going to say our goodbyes off the air, so stick around. But this was amazing, and I cannot thank you enough. I know some of these stories are definitely not easy to revisit, but I'm so glad you did, because it's going to help a whole new generation of police officers out there, and even the retired ones. Anybody that listens to this, I think they'll benefit a lot. So thank you so much for making the time.
I'm glad you had me on, and I'm glad I was able once again to tell my story, because I want to help, and like I said, I appreciate it so much.
No, I appreciate it. The pleasure is all mine, my friend, and you definitely did help. Stick around. Like I said, we'll say our goodbyes off the air. And thanks to everybody that tuned in tonight via YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Coming up next on the Mike the New Haven podcast, we usually do our shows on Tuesdays. There's no show on Tuesday this week. It's been moved to Wednesday. I had a little bit of a scheduling conflict. So this Wednesday at 7, Volume 3 of The Beat, Profiles of Police Nationwide. That's going to be Bill Hansen. He's a detective retired out of the Tucson, Arizona Police Department. So he'll tell me about his career out in that portion of the country, specifically his years in Tucson. So looking forward to that. And I believe, if I recall correctly, next Friday, September 8th, yes, is another volume of The Beat. Retired Special Agent Ken Strange worked in the Department of Justice, worked in the FBI, wrote a book. His dad was actually a chief on the NYPD. So he'll tell me about that. And those should be 2 very good shows coming up. Again, Wednesday, no Tuesday this upcoming week, Wednesday and Friday, volumes 4 and 5 of The Beat, respectively. In the meantime, on behalf of retired NYPD Detective Roy Ruland, I'm Mike Colón, and we will see you next time. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves. much.